Hey everyone, I want to welcome all of you to our Member Connect this morning. Um, Thank you for joining us. And our guest today is Mr. Cory Uselton. And so I am going to let him have the floor and let him tell us what's going on with the schools.
Great. I appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation. As I always say, I enjoy getting a chance to talk to our realtors. I know that y'all have a very important job out there, and it's always good for y'all to have as much information as possible about our schools. I know that schools are asked about quite often when you're out selling houses, and so I always want you to have the most up-to-date information and to be able to share information that buyers need when they're making choices. And let me mute my phone real quick. I knew somebody would call as soon as we got on here, so that way we won't have that interruption again. All right, just wanted to go over a few things. Start out, give you some enrollment numbers, talk about facilities, and then we'll talk about COVID and some of our accomplishments with the school district. I've just got a real mixed bag of information for you today, and then I'll take a few questions when I get done with that. First of all, our enrollment numbers were just above 34,000 students. And when we look at that, at the beginning of the year, or let's say back in July, there was a lot of speculation about what our enrollment would look like. Would you have a lot of students who didn't return to school? And so we finished last year around 34,700 students. When we started this school year, we were down about 900 students. So we were down about 2% at 33,900. But now that number's bounced back up to about 34,200. So, our enrollment is staying pretty steady. So if anybody were to ask you about that, enrollment is not a big issue. We are fairly close to where we have been in the past. And so there hasn't been a huge drop off as far as the number of students who are attending school. As far as how students are attending school, I think most of you know that we have offered two options. We've got the in-person option, and we've also got the virtual option. Now today is actually the first day of the second 9 weeks, and so parents had the option of changing their child from one direction to the other. Most of the ones who made the changes were going from the virtual option back to school. We did have a few that chose to go from school to virtual, but I would say about 90% of those that made a decision were making the decision to actually go back to the classroom. And we started the year at 63% of our students were in person. Today we're at 73%. So our number of in-person students has went up by about 10%. So we started out at 63%, and now we're at about 73%. Those numbers are approximate. Just to give you an idea, we started the year around 21,000 students in person and about 13,000 virtual. And now we're at about 25,000 students in person and about 9,000 students virtual. All right. And as I tell people, we're trying to do the best that we can with virtual, and our teachers, and you may already know, our teachers are trying to do both, and it's been a stressor on everybody, just like everything, whether we're talking about real estate or school or the restaurant business or anything at this point. It's just that everybody's having to do more than what they've done in the past, and that's anybody in the school system, whether we're talking about a bus driver, someone who works in child nutrition, somebody who works in the front office, a teacher in the classroom, a principal, a superintendent even. So whoever it might be, everyone's just having to do more because of COVID. But with that, our teachers are doing the best job that they possibly can and trying to live in both worlds right now, the traditional and the virtual also. And some of our schools, that if you ever hear anyone, talk about, well, this school is doing this or that school is doing that, it's impossible for every school to do the same thing when it comes to virtual education in our district, because we have 38 traditional schools, and you've got some school zones where you might only have 10 or 15% of the students doing virtual, where you've got other school zones where you may have up to 50 to 60% of the students doing virtual. And so it varies by grade level. It varies by the number of students who are doing virtual. So all of those things tied in. It's just impossible for every school to do the same thing. But I wanted you to know about that and know about those numbers. On our facilities, I wanted to let you know about projects that just finished up as far as facilities. DeSoto Central High School had the biggest addition this year. We just finished up the Freshman Academy, which I'm sure all of you have seen if you've been down Getwell lately. It's a 2-story structure on the north side of the campus. It adds 23 classrooms to DeSoto Central High School. They've been in need of classrooms. I was the principal there, so that's one that I've known has been in need of more classrooms. Right when I was actually leaving in the fall of 2015 to become superintendent, there was an 8-classroom addition on the south side of campus, but this is going to give a lot more breathing room to DeSoto Central High School. We also had 3 other projects that we just completed at Hernando Hills Elementary School. They received 4 classrooms, and then we built 8 classrooms at both DeSoto Central Middle and at Hernando Middle also. So all those schools received additional classrooms, and all of those are up and running. We have got, right now, we've got 5 construction projects that are either ongoing or about to be ongoing. And just so you'll know about these, the ones that will start in the spring, Pleasant Hill Elementary School, DeSoto Central Primary School, Lewisburg High School, and Hernando High School. All of those schools are getting additional classrooms. Pleasant Hill Elementary School and DeSoto Central Primary are both in the DeSoto Central zone, and they're both getting 4 classrooms each. The Hernando High School will be getting, I believe it's 10 classrooms there, and Lewisburg High School will be getting 8 classrooms on their campus. And so we're trying to do as much as we can in all 3 of those zones, the DeSoto Central, the Lewisburg, and the Hernando zones, as far as building classrooms, because those have been the areas for the most crowded school zones. And I'm sure that y'all know that, because those are probably the ones where y'all are selling a lot of houses, because we keep seeing an increase in the number of students at each of those. Also, the Lewisburg Middle School project is ongoing on Highway 305. We're hoping that it'll be ready in August of 2021 for the start of the upcoming school year. That's the plan. We're not going to back up the school year or anything like that if it's not ready. If it's not, we'll just open it later in the year. But the plan out at Lewisburg is for that to be open to start the school year. Highway 305 there in front of the school will be widened. We're looking at a turn lane in the middle, and then also if you're coming in from the north, almost like an exit ramp, there'll be a right-hand turn lane to go into Lewisburg Middle School. That way traffic can keep moving better in that part of the county, while also accommodating the school traffic. And with that, that should alleviate a lot of the traffic on Craft Road, which has become a big issue in Lewisburg. And if you actually look at a map of the Lewisburg zone, even though the new campus seems like it's so far away and it's in the very southern part of the zone and all this, it's really not actually. The new Lewisburg Middle School is not far from the very center point of the Lewisburg school zone. And there are a lot of students that actually live south of there. But what it is the current campus is in the northwestern part. And so it just kind of gives the appearance that it's way away from the rest of the zone. It's just way away from the rest of the campus as far as that part. But it's about a 7 or 8 minute drive from those, but it will alleviate a lot of the traffic. And the other thing that it'll do is it will allow a lot more growth in that area for years to come, because the Lewisburg Elementary campus and the Lewisburg Primary campus are currently 3 grades each. They're going to go down to 2 grades each, because the primary school next year will be, if we open it in the fall, the primary school will be a K1 instead of a K1-2. What's currently Lewisburg Elementary, it'll stay Lewisburg Elementary, but it'll be 2nd and 3rd grade only instead of 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Then the middle school will turn into an intermediate school. It will be Lewisburg Intermediate School, and it will have 4th and 5th grade there. And one of the main reasons why something had to be built there is because if you've ever looked at the footprint of Lewisburg Elementary School and Lewisburg Primary on a map, they are side by side. I mean, we're basically running into each other eventually if we kept expanding those two campuses. But what it'll do, as I said, it'll allow the Lewisburg area to grow for years to come. The middle school, if the Lewisburg community keeps growing like it is now, it'll be built to where additions can be made easily there. And then the high school will be the only one that more additions might have to be made to in the future. But I feel pretty strongly that, for several years we should be fine as far as at the elementary schools at Lewisburg. And then if we needed any more additions at the middle school, that we could do that too. I will tell y'all this, and, in case it ever does come up, people have asked about Hernando, and my own kids go to school in Hernando, so I hear about it a lot, as far as us building classrooms and Hernando traffic and it being overcrowded. We were actually looking at what would have been a bond issue. It would have not raised taxes. It would have been a no tax bond issue. And that would have really upgraded the facilities in the Hernando area. The problem that we ran into is the problem that we all ran into with everything, and that's COVID. So we had that on the drawing board, looking at the summer and then moving into the fall with a possible bond issue. Once again, that wouldn't have raised taxes, but it would have really especially helped the Hernando community. We're also looking at some addition career tech on the career tech side on the west side, and then building a new career tech on the east side of the county. And I bring that up because just to tell you all that in case you ever hear about it, it's good for y'all to know it. But at the same time, that is something that we may look at in the future as far as, trying to help Hernando more than we are now, even though we're adding classrooms. We were, looking at, just like we were doing at Lewisburg Middle School, looking at the possibility of a new Hernando High School, which wouldn't have been right there in that central area where all the traffic is. So I do want y'all to know that in case it ever comes up in conversations that we were going to be proactive there in the Hernando community. But with COVID, obviously that put everything on hold, and it may put it on hold, for another year or 2 years, even before we even start looking at that, just because we've got to get out past this before we ever start looking at the possibility of a bond election. Even though it doesn't raise taxes, we still need to get past this before we get to that point. All right, so just to move on to a few other things, and these will be kind of a little more all over the place. The COVID reporting, you may have seen where we report each Monday. We put a report on our district website, the number of student cases per school, the number of quarantines per school, and then the number of teachers and staff members at the schools that have COVID. We list the teachers and staff by the district, a total number, not by school, but we list the student cases per school. And we felt like at the beginning of the year that parents would want to know that information, and so we were very proactive in putting that out there. I mean, some weeks the numbers, look relatively low. Some weeks they're higher. This past week, the one that we announced yesterday was higher than what we've had all year. The reason why, the main reason why, is because we had 2 football teams that had clusters of cases, one at South Haven High School and one at DeSoto Central High School. Both of those teams shut down their football operations for 14 days in order to make sure to get that under control. And so that drove up the number of cases district-wide because that school, both of those schools, had more cases. But we felt at the beginning of the year that it was important to report the cases each week and to be transparent about that. We know that parents want to know what's going on in their schools, and they don't always hear about every student case. And the reason why we notify parents if their child is in a classroom with a student who has a confirmed case of COVID, we let parents know about that. We encourage them to check symptoms and see their doctor if needed. And then the close contacts, that part, the quarantine process, that's through the Mississippi State Department of Health and their regulations. What they have designated as a close contact is anyone who's within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. And it doesn't matter if they're wearing a mask, not wearing a mask. That's the guidelines that we have from the state. And so that's been something that I know has been very frustrating to a lot of people because we've had to send a lot of kids home for 14 days that aren't showing symptoms, that don't have COVID. But as I said, those are the state guidelines, and in order to have school, we have to follow the state guidelines. And so we've been pleased that our cases have not been very high going into the year. I mean, I don't think any school district had even wanted to make a prediction of what a normal school day would look like, but we've now at least got a pretty good idea as far as, relatively speaking, how many cases we usually have during a week, and we've been doing this long enough now to where we can start seeing those schools that we really need to keep an eye on as far as when their cases start getting a little higher than what you would expect to see. When you look at the number of students that we have in the classroom, though, each day, we feel good about that we've been able to keep the case numbers as low as they have been. I want to commend our students and our staff at our schools for following procedures that are in place, and also thank our parents too, because our parents are the first line of defense in the morning. If they are checking their child's temperature and keeping their child at home when they're sick, then that obviously cuts down a lot of problems. One thing that we did there is we changed our exemption schedule for this year, and that is in the past, in order to be exempt from exams, you had to have 2 absences or less, and so we've just done away with the absence part for this school year because we didn't want to be saying, hey, keep your child at home if they're sick, and then at the same time say, well, forget about exemptions now, though, you get too many absences. So we just cut out the absence part when it comes to exemptions, and just to play it safe there, and to allow parents to be able to keep their child at home if they're not feeling well. And so we feel good about where we are right now, but every day is a new day, and we never want to let our guard down. We never can let our guard down with our procedures and anything of that nature. But also, we felt that opening up the schools was very important, mainly for our students, because on the academic side, it's just learning virtually is tough. It doesn't matter what type of setup you have. It's just harder for students to learn virtually without having that teacher right in front of them, but also for our students' social and emotional needs, for them to have that interaction on campus with their students. We felt that was very important too. And so we know that as the largest employer in the school in the county, and also one that's a big part of what y'all do for a living too in the real estate industry, is that we felt it was very important that our students get back to school and to have that interaction with their teachers and have that interaction with other students. And relatively speaking, we feel like it's gone really well up to this point. As far as just a few accomplishments to talk about, Money Magazine, I know y'all have seen where Olive Branch was named one of the top 50 places to live. We were excited to see they mentioned the schools in that, and so we've got 3 school zones, actually 4 if you include DeSoto Central, but you've got Lewisburg, Olive Branch, and Center Hill, all with Olive Branch addresses out there. And also you may have seen where Center Hill High School they were just named a National Blue Ribbon School, so we're very proud of them. They were the only high school in the state that received that honor, and I believe they were the first high school since 2011 in Mississippi that's received that honor. So we've gone 9 years in the state without any high schools anywhere in the state receiving the National Blue Ribbon status. So we're very proud to see Center Hill High School get that. Also, we've got 25 seniors who've been named as National Merit semifinalists. That's the second highest total in the history of the district. That was beat out by our number of 26 last year. So we came up a little short of last year's record, but our seniors have done a great job there. And so we have 25 district-wide that have received that National Merit semifinalist status. And one other thing I was going to a couple of things I was going to touch on, they've been a little bit different this year. The main thing with the schedule, the 70% Fridays, we put that in just a few weeks ago, and that's in place through at least December 18th. That was to help our teachers, especially those that are trying to balance the traditional and the virtual at the same time. And they've really been using that time effectively. And we feel like it's going to help both of our groups of students, traditional and virtual, because it just gives our teachers more time to be able to get ready for what lies ahead in the next week. And so, okay, I've run down through a lot of things there at one time. And so I'll turn it over to y'all. If there were questions that y'all wanted me to answer, I see there's a chat thing at the bottom. I didn't know if that was for me or not.
Yes, there's a couple of questions in the chat for you. If anyone else has any questions, you can add them to the chat.
The one about the dresses that are $23 each, that wasn't for me, right? So, yeah.
That wasn't for you, but your wife might want to check out the Prime deals today.
I'll make sure and let her know about that. All right, let's see. Do you have any idea if state guidelines for quarantine will change? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on with that. Is that we have a Friday conference call with Dr. Dobbs each week. Dr. Dobbs is the chief health officer, and so each week they start. We ask questions, and about 2 weeks ago, he said, well, first of all, during the summer months, we were told at that time that if students were wearing masks, they would not have to be quarantined. Well, then that got changed. Obviously, that was a huge part of our plan because, we wouldn't have to quarantine really anybody because everybody's wearing a mask all day. But then they told us about 2 weeks ago, they said that they were looking at changing the quarantine orders because they knew a lot of students were missing class, and so that they were really starting to look at allowing students to attend class even if they were close contact. They just wouldn't be able to participate in athletics and other events where they're not able to wear a mask. So I was, real excited about that from the standpoint of just knowing, from so many parents that I've talked to. We've even had students who have been quarantined and then came back, and then like 2 or 3 days later got quarantined again. That's just really hard to explain to parents. And I think everyone realizes we're having to follow those guidelines. But with all that being said, I asked last week if they could do a survey of superintendents. And the reason why is because they told us last week, they said, well, we're not going to change quarantine orders because we've heard from a lot of schools that said they're working real well and that we're going to leave them. And so the question I posed was, can you ask everybody? Because I didn't know we had a chance to even give any feedback on it. And so they conducted a survey Friday. I don't know what the results of that survey were, but I let them know the feedback that we've gotten from parents here. And I don't know if they'll change, but I know from all the parents that I've talked to, and other districts are different. Just because no one else has got 34,000 students, Jackson Public's got 22,000. They're learning virtually. That's all that they're doing. They're just 100% virtual. And so the next largest school district, I think, has 19,000. So there's only like a couple of districts or even half of the size of DeSoto County. So, when we're giving feedback, there may be some districts that only have maybe 1,000 students in their district. And so they've only quarantined just a few students all year. So it's working great for them. But, we're having to quarantine usually the way it's working out is between 150 and 250 students each week are going home for 2 weeks. And then this past week, because of the 2 outbreaks we had, I believe it was over 380 students district-wide were quarantined, which relatively speaking is still a lower number based on the number of students we have. But at the same time, it's something that we've asked the Mississippi State Department of Health to look into. And so they are considering changing the quarantine orders, but obviously that's going to be completely up to them. All right, I'm going to see if I answer that. My kids have both been quarantined 3 times. Well, okay, there's between the 2 of them, and I totally understand. I mean, because neither of my sons have been quarantined, but I know I hate to say it's just a matter of time, but as the school year goes on, I know more and more people personally, that have reached out to me that their children have been quarantined, and it's difficult, just like a lot of things are difficult right now. Is there enough land to add more schools at the 305 location? On that one, it is possible that one could be added out there in the future. Right now, we're clearing land in the back for an athletic practice facility. But when we bought that, there could be the possibility of something being built there on the north side of the campus. I will say this, though, is that, just personally speaking, I would think that that would be something that would happen, 10, 15 years down the road, possibly. There was no intention, when we built that, of there being a new zone built out there. There was a lot of talk of, well, this may be the Cochran school zone. They're going to add, a high school and elementary school. And so there's no plan in place for that. It's just an extension of the Lewisburg zone, Lewisburg campuses. When you look at other school zones, a lot of them are separated. I think that Lewisburg was very fortunate to have all of them together, and that worked great when it was real small. But with only that one road, it became more difficult. When you look at the Center Hill zone, Center Hill Elementary is further probably from the middle school campus and the high school campus than it is at Lewisburg. If it's not further, it's about the same distance. Same thing in Walls. You got Walls Elementary School, which is separate from the Lake Cormorant schools. Even in Hernando, trying to maneuver traffic in Hernando may take 10 or 15 minutes to get across town from Oak Road to Hernando Hills. And so Pleasant Hill and DeSoto Central, I could go on and on about that part. So there was never an intention of there being a new zone there. I wouldn't rule that out. I don't think it'll happen during my time as superintendent. There would have to be, years and years of growth in that area. But to answer your question, yes, if there was enough room, it would be most likely an elementary school. There wouldn't be enough room to build like a high school and have all the athletic facilities and everything of that nature. Like at Lewisburg, we're looking at them still using the football field, soccer field for their games at the main Lewisburg campus. And then the volleyball and the basketball games would occur on the new Lewisburg Middle School campus. All right. Thank you for helping the teachers on the half days on Friday. Hope it continues. We're going to study that throughout this semester. And a lot of it will depend, too, on the virtual numbers and how much assistance the teachers need. We also did a couple of other things for that I didn't talk about earlier. We added 2 distance learning assistants at each school this year. They're basically teacher assistants, but 2 extra employees. And going back to the word time, and then we talked about 70% to try to give more time to plan. The 70%, the distance learning assistants are there to upload items into Schoology, or just even make copies for teachers, or to respond to parent emails if it's about login information or something technical. Just anything that we could do to make it to where take things off of the teacher's plate that we could have another staff member doing, just to try to take some of that stress off our teachers. We want to do all that we can to support our teachers. We all know how hard they work, and in DeSoto County, we've got such a great group of teachers. We're so fortunate. So we just want to make sure that we can do all that we can to support them. Let's see, see the positive results. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate the positive comments from Kim Starnes there. It's what I was saying earlier. It's just, it has been a struggle. And, as an educator, I'm in year 27 in education. This is, I'm in year 5 as superintendent. Never would I've ever dreamed, that I would be charged with this type of task. If I have had one person say to me, I wouldn't want to be in your job, I think I hear that about 5 times a day everywhere I go now. And so I said, well, I guess that's job security, because nobody else wants my job right now. So, but at the same time, it's just been such a challenge. But, I feel like that everything that I've done in my career up to this point, and I've told our administrators and our teachers this, everything you've done in your career has led you up to this point. And I feel like the experience that I had as a principal and as a superintendent, nothing could completely prepare me for this job. But all those experiences along the way have helped out, and just trying to stay in touch with our parents and knowing what our parents want and need during this time. And I just felt like it was so important for our students to go back to school, and not only go back to school, but go back to school 5 days a week. And, I've had a lot of people ask, well, are you considering if this happens, would you consider going virtual? If this happens, and the only thing that we would necessarily look at is if we get into a situation where we have a lot of cases, we have some clusters of cases at a school, we could look at maybe going hybrid schedule for a couple of weeks to maybe cut down the number of quarantines and things of that nature. But I do want everyone to know that barring a statewide shutdown, what we're looking at is we look at everything on a school-by-school basis. We got 38 schools, and so we look at it in terms of, if something's happening at Hernando, that doesn't necessarily mean it's happening at Center Hill, or if something's happening in Olive Branch, it doesn't necessarily mean it's happening in Horn Lake. And so we don't want to put down any type of blanket judgment of, everyone needs to go hybrid because of what's happening at this school. And it does happen sometimes in some smaller districts, just because you're dealing with the same families going to the same schools, K through 12. But in ours, each zone is so much different. And like we saw a lot of cases in the Hernando and Lewisburg schools earlier in the year, and now the cases went down over the last couple of weeks in those schools, and now it's gone up in some other schools. And so just so y'all know, in case you start hearing anything in the community, we try to make decisions just based on each school and the cases and the quarantines at each school, instead of trying to make a blanket judgment over what's going on throughout the entire county. I just want to thank y'all for the opportunity to do this, and I appreciate all of y'all's work. I know that y'all work very hard, and I know that schools are an important part of your job. And so, as I said, I want to always keep y'all informed on what's going on, and I truly look forward to coming out and presenting again in person in the very near future. Let's hope. We'll all keep our fingers crossed on that one. So, but once again, thank y'all, and I'll let y'all get to the important business now that I'm done. So I'll head out. All right. Thank y'all.